In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw this photograph using two-point perspective. This is what the drawing will look like at the end of the video. In the previous video, we set up our paper, added on wings or extenders on the sides, and found our vanishing points in our horizon line and started our drawing. I'm going to start off by drawing the table that's underneath all of the objects. You can see it in the photograph above. Here are the objects that I'm drawing, and you can see the edges of the table. After I do the front edges of the table, I'm trying to figure out where the back is. And although most of the back of the table doesn't show in the drawing, it's helpful to kind of anchor the objects on there and to have that size and proportion to start with. So I'm trying to make it as accurate as possible. Once I have the table the right size, I'm going to connect the corners, drawing an X on the surface of the table. Now by having that X, I know where the exact center of the table is. And now I can use that center, going back to both vanishing points, and I know where the center on the edges are. So I can look at my photograph and figure out what's in the middle. The colored pencils takes up about half of the length of the table, so now I can start to draw those just a little bit past halfway, using both vanishing points, and I'm going to try to make it the same size and the same proportions as I see in the photograph. So here it looks a little bit too wide, so I'm going to narrow it down a little bit, bring that edge in, and make it just slightly smaller so it's more of a long rectangle for that box of colored pencils. Now that the box is drawn, I'd like to add some of the details on top. I always like to find the center so I can try to get my proportions as accurate as possible. So you can see I'm drawing another X, and again that'll just help me figure out the top half of the colored pencils versus the bottom half, or the left side of the box versus the right side of the box. Again, you go from the center of the X back to the vanishing points, and now you've divided the box in half, top to bottom and left to right. So let's look at that box of colored pencils close up. What happens if I draw the X on top? So just imagine that I'm drawing those lines on there and which details end up in which parts. So for example, where would that point be? If I look back at my drawing, I know it's going to be in the middle in terms of left to right, so it has to be on that line. But how do I figure out how to make the angles even? So if that's the center of the box and I'm moving up the box just a little bit, I need to move up the box just a little in my drawing. So I find that point, and now I draw that from there to the center, and from that same spot again to the vanishing point, and then from the center to the edge of the box. So I am drawing the same shaped triangle as what I had on the box of colored pencils. To look at it directly on the box, what I drew was from that line up and down, and then from this edge back to vanishing point 1, because they should end up on the same orthogonal line. So the bottom of that triangle should go from there to there, heading toward vanishing point 1. So what if I wanted to draw the colored pencils on the box of colored pencils? Where do they go? They all go to vanishing point 2. So I'm going to draw orthogonal lines going to vanishing point 2 so I can put the colored pencils in there. Now I want to draw the letters at the top that say Prismacolor. So the top of all of the letters are even with the top of the box, and so are the bottom of the letters. So I just gave myself a little tiny space with 2 lines going to vanishing point 1, and all of my letters now are going to go to vanishing point 2. So that's a little tiny letter P, and next I'm going to do an R, and work my way right down all of the letters of Prismacolor, with the letter A in Prismacolor being in the center. So now if I want to do this number 36 inside of the triangle, I need to be able to draw the point of the triangle in the center and the bottom of the triangle going to vanishing point 1. So I'm going to start off with the bottom of the triangle, draw my line to vanishing point 1, and then connect it to that center line that already goes to vanishing point 2. And then I'm going to draw the numbers 3 and 6 inside of the triangle and try to keep them going to both vanishing points. So now I'm going to repeat all of these steps, trying to keep everything in proportion and draw all of the other boxes that are on that same table. Once again, after finding the center of the box, I'm drawing through the center back to both vanishing points, and I'm going to show you what that would line up with on the watercolor palette. Looking at the watercolor palette, since there's 5 colors in the top and 5 in the bottom, the third color will be in the center, as well as the center line to hold a paintbrush down the middle of the palette. So I'm drawing a box in the center, so that will be for the third color in the top row and the third color in the bottom row. And then I can start to draw my ellipses in there. So I can make 2 smaller boxes and then put X's through those. That could be helpful. And I can make those boxes the same size, the entire length, so all of my circles will end up the same size. Let's just take a peek at the photograph again, and I'm going to next draw the Legos and then the oil pastel box, and I'm going to do all of that on fast forward just so you can kind of see the process to get the drawing finished. But it's really repeating all of those same steps. So drawing an X to find the center, drawing boxes to then draw inside of it so you can see how the letters develop and how the proportions on other areas develop. After I do all of the boxes, I'm going to give some sense of the background, so the yellow couch chair in the background as well as the gray curtains on the left-hand side. So once you get to this point, you have a choice. You can either finish this drawing by adding more text, the other images on the box, texture, background, value shading, color, all of those things. Or you can choose to do an organic object. So an organic object might be something that has curves, like this camera, because there are curves up by the buttons, or this bottle of cleaning liquid, and there are rounded edges on it, or a hair dryer. All of these things will still follow the rules of perspective, and it is helpful to start by drawing boxes around those. I would really actually encourage you to try a study like this. Rather than shading or adding color to another drawing, which you've done in the past, try something you've never done. These are challenging. I think they're super rewarding when you're able to actually draw something in perspective that's also rounded. So I'd say go for option 2 and turn in a second object that's also a line drawing in a study, but shows curves and a new level of technical ability. Go for it.